Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Star Wars: Temptation of the Force by Tessa Gratton. This is the penultimate adult novel in the High Republic series. I've been reading and reviewing all the High Republic series as they've been coming out, and I am a particularly fond person of the adult novels. The middle grade are hit and miss for me, and the YA are very hit and miss. Almost all of the adult novels and scripts have absolutely hit it out of the park for me. And it's strange that they're that strong comparatively, but I've really enjoyed them. Even authors that have written middle grade or YA books have jumped up to write an adult book, and the adult book was miles better than their middle grade or YA, which I just thought was kind of interesting. But this is the penultimate book in the series, the final adult novel, Trials of the Jedi, by Charles Soule, comes out in 2025, and that'll end the High Republic as it is a series at the moment. There might be other stories in the series, but this is the penultimate adult novel. We still have a script for the adult books. We still have some YA and middle grade left, but we're getting close to the end here. And this book is continuing on the stories set up in two previous books. One is you have the previous adult book, The Eye of Darkness, which was an amazing, terrific kickoff for Phase 3. This is like the bad guys have had this huge, epic takeover of the storm wall, and you're reading everyone who's stuck in the storm walls trying to get out, and people from outside the storm wall trying to get in, and they can't because Martian Row has this absolute chokehold on the galaxy, and it's great. And then this, the Temptation of the Force, is also a sequel to the events of Defy the Storm. And originally, when I was reading it, I didn't think it would be, but as the book progresses, a lot of the characters in this book are present in Temptation of the Force, to the point that I say, yes, there's usually like one or two YA books in each phase that are like, I would say essential, or at least close to as essential as you can get. And this is one of them. You might get away with only reading the adult books, and your process as a whole might be more enjoyable. But if you're wanting to understand everything, this is one of those that actually I think it is kind of important. And by the way, this one's also co-written by Tessa Gratton, who also did Temptation of the Force. So there's kind of synergy there, which is probably why it has so many of those characters, because Tessa loves those characters. This book... Part of what's interesting about this book is that it was pitched as being the Empire Strikes Back love story of Han and Leia type story for two of the characters in the book. And as you could probably guess by the cover, those two characters being Elzar Mann and Avar Kriss. And I saw some complaints online saying, oh, they're just doing a Star Wars Harlequin romance. And I'm like, okay, first of all, we've done other Star Wars romances. They've been pretty entertaining. So that's one. Secondly, that's not the only part of this book. That is a part of it. And I don't know if it's not, I would not call it a minor part because it's throughout the book, but it's not like the main focus. It's a major focus of the book, but not the focus of the book. It's not near as detailed a love story as, say, Lost Stars was, and it's nowhere near as focused on the love story as A Crash of Fate was. The love story is in here, and when the characters get together and are talking with each other, yeah, that's a big element of it, but it's not the main part of the story, which is why I think it works in here. But Tessa Gratton, in not only in the back of the book when she's talking about it in her acknowledgments, but also when I've seen marketing, there's all this discussion of this being more of The Empire Strikes Back. This book, to me, feels much more like Attack of the Clones, because the dynamic between Elzar and Avar is so close to the dynamic between Anakin and Padme, and the themes explored are like the exact same themes. The themes of attachment, the themes of forbidden love, the themes of how do we make this work, will the Jedi accept us, things like that. Those are all explored here, and were explored excellently. I loved the exploration of them here. And I will say, just as a side note, it is refreshing to see a much more traditional type relationship in the High Republic, because we don't see that often. Anyway, so that's part of the book. But the other part of the book is dealing with the Storm Wall. And this is getting into the slightest of contextual spoilers for The Eye of Darkness. Obviously, characters are now starting to figure out ways to slip in and out of the storm wall. And so because of that, the Republic leadership decides to start sending in teams to try to retake some planets, to try to destroy the storm wall once and for all. And so Elzar, Avar are joined by other characters like Bel Zettifar and Bur Yaga and Vernestra, and they're joined by a lot of Jedi and non-Jedi to go and take out the Nile planets in a few places, and to specifically try to take down the storm wall. And they start with Naboo. And so that is like the main part of the book. And the Naboo section of the book is actually in the middle of the book. And it's the middle portion. And it's really weird that you have all this setup. I was like, okay, we're going to have this huge, epic, long, extended sequence on Naboo. And the sequence on Naboo itself is not as long as you'd expect. And it ends really quickly. And then the book goes off in the final 100 pages on this other tangent and this other part of the story. And I thought, why was this paced this way? That was such an odd choice to make the big epic battle in the middle. There's still a battle action sequence towards the end of the book that was actually quite fun to read, but it felt like that this should have been paced differently, that the whole stuff on Naboo should have been the big overarching stuff near the end of the story, and then that final action sequence that takes place should have been part of the Naboo storyline. But because of it, it feels like you have 3 acts, and the big act is Act 2. And usually the big act is supposed to be Act 3. And that was an odd choice in the book. There's also a subplot that ties into the main plot where Bel Zettifar and Bur Yaga are dealing with the Drengir, and they're exploring something weird that's happening with the Drengir, and I won't spoil what it is. And I understood why it was included. It just wasn't as enjoyable for me. And I love Bel Zettifar and Bur Yaga. I really like their characters, particularly Bel. I really think Bel's one of my favorite characters in the story, in the overarching High Republic. But his story here just didn't resonate with me at all, and so I just didn't particularly like it. And then I will say that one thing that this book does really nice is it explores ideas with the Jedi at a time when the Jedi are at their most powerful and they're at their most confident. And I liked exploring the themes there because Yoda's answer is like when Yoda answers a question in this book, it is perfectly in line with what Yoda would say because it's in line with his character, but the way he says it is so different than the way he would have said it in the during the events of the prequel trilogy, because he's 200 years older, life is different, the status of the universe is different, and so I just thought it was so interesting seeing those types of themes explored from this entirely different perspective of the universe. So I really liked the thematic explorations here. The book has an ending, a denouement that is just woo, it's not really a denouement, it's just like a surprise ending. And when I read that, I wasn't ready for it to go there. And all I will say about this book, about its ending is, boy, are they trying to go toe-to-toe with the new Jedi Order. Not that, it's the Yuuzhan Vong are not showing up or anything, but in the way it handles something at the end here is exactly how the characters in the New Jedi Order would react in those books from that series when they were fighting the Vong. And so when that happened, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, that's a very EU thing to do. And not just the New Jedi Order, also in Legacy of the Force and in Fate of the Jedi, they do the same thing. And anyway, I just thought, oh, that's really fascinating because we don't see that often in the canon books. That's an EU type thing to do, and I just thought that was really fascinating. So that is my review of Temptation of the Force. I enjoyed it. It is probably, honestly, my least favorite of the adult novels, simply because it just didn't connect as a full book. I thought there were a few plotting issues, some pacing things, but despite that, it's still an entertaining ride. It's still setting stuff up for Trials of the Jedi, which I'm super excited about. And I think this is still better than most of the YA and most of the middle grade books. So the adult line, I still think, is the strongest line in the High Republic. I just think this is the weakest book in that line. But I still think it's really entertaining. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10. No, that's pretty good. It was entertaining. It wasn't amazing. So if you've read Temptation of the Force, let me know your thoughts on it. What did you think about the ending with spoiler characters? Oh, that was so good. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.